Got it.
Okay.
So, Joy, are you going to show the slides or do you want me to?
If you could go ahead, that'd be great.
Okay.
And David, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm David Trebish. I just joined the panel this year, and I love EVs. I have them. I have 3 of them right now, and I thought it'd be a great idea to just join the panel and help people ease their way into EVs that who have a lot of anxiety or some anxiety around, okay, is this the right choice? So I volunteered to do this.
And I want to say hello. I'm Peter Puglianesi. So I'm going to jump in from time to time. I also, I guess my first electric was a motorcycle in 2016. I have a 2019 Bolt that I've been driving for now 5 years and just got a Tesla. So I've got a lot of different variety and experiences and e-bikes also.
Yeah, so yeah, I have a Bolt and a Volt. I have a Bolt and a Volt, by the way. 2017 and 2019, and a BMW i3, which is an interesting vehicle. But well, welcome everybody. I want to go over just a few points about EVs because I don't know if everyone here is either has them or strongly considering them, but I highly recommend them. I've owned both gas cars and EVs and strongly prefer EVs to gas, with a few caveats, of course, which we'll get into. But for the most part, EVs are definitely, I think, a lot better in so many different ways. One, they're a lot of fun. I think that gets overlooked because of the focus on how good they are for the environment and how people care about the environment and they think EVs are a way to do that, which they are. But more importantly, I think or just as importantly, they're a lot of fun to drive. They are more affordable than people think, at least most of them. And I think they're clean and simple. And I like simplicity. In fact, that's one of the things that I'm a therapist. So one of the things I say is keep it simple, and EVs definitely fit that. And there are differences between 2 different types of EVs. There's all electric vehicles, and then there's plug-in hybrids, and they're a little bit different actually. And so I can help explain the differences for those who might not know, and feel free to ask any questions as far as which one might be better for you. And there's also, Peter was talking about it. He has a Bolt and a Tesla. There are right now, up until especially next year, there are a lot of differences between Teslas and non-Tesla EVs. And we can go over that as well. So those are the main points that I want to go over, as well as some other things that Peter is going to probably go over as well. So
if I could jump in for just a second. So as we go along, if you want to put in the chat any questions or what do you hope to come away from this with, and then we'll have a lot of chance to dialogue at the end. I guess as far as the presentation goes, the first question, the trivia question, I hope I didn't ruin it by advancing the slide one. When was the first electric car made? Was it 1985 or 1885 or 1785? Okay, the suspense is killing us. Believe it or not, 1832. So All this newfangled technology is almost 200 years old.
I guess before big oil. Okay.
So yeah, I think the early days was sort of, obviously the Wild West of uh, motorized vehicles, but so electrics were actually much more popular initially, and really was the Model T that supplanted all the other options for motorized transportation back in the early 1900s. All right, take it away, David.
All right. Yeah, definitely feel free to ask any questions. Peter, you think we should do it during or after, or leave it for after?
Well, if you put it in the chat at any time, and you know, we'll try to answer them as we go.
Okay, sounds good. So first thing I mentioned about EVs is that they're a lot of fun. That's the one thing I notice when I drive, when I drive the EV, my EV. It's they're really quick, they're very smooth, and they're extremely responsive. And if you need to accelerate really quickly, like merging onto the highway, the acceleration is instant, and it's powerful on large majority of them. That I think helps even prevent some accidents because you can really maneuver a lot more with greater agility than I think with a gas car or most gas cars. The other thing is the engine really doesn't make any noise. Um, Even when you accelerate, there's no engine vibration at all. And this also makes for great listening to either music or podcasts or, when you're in the car, because there's no background noise except for the wind and other cars. And the ride is really smooth, both in acceleration as well as in braking. This is because fully electric cars allow you to brake by simply taking your foot off the accelerator. A lot of them have what's called one pedal driving, and it's really regenerative braking, but pretty abrupt. Not abrupt like getting to accident abrupt, but it's more than you'd feel, much more than in a gas car. And the brake pedal is, there when you need it. But that's one of the things I love driving in the Bolt, and Peter can attest to this. There's an L mode, for example, in the Bolt, and I always drive in that mode. But my daughter drives in regular drive mode, so she drives like a regular car, if you like that, not like a gas car.
Well, and
Uh,
I've now tried both of them, and I actually have an opinion. So the Bolt, the advantage of the Bolt is that one of those modes mimics combustion engines very closely. And so I actually used that for years because I was going back and forth between a combustion vehicle and an electric vehicle. And I said, oh, I don't want to do the wrong thing. So I'm going to drive in that mode all the time.
Interesting. So you don't drive your Bolt in L mode?
The Bolt, no. And now I'm mostly driving the Tesla, which really doesn't have sort of a mode that is closely simulating an ICE engine. And so it took a little bit of training, but there are a couple of different modes. There's the one pedal driving mode, which I don't use again for that same reason. We still have one minivan / pickup truck that I use. And so I don't want to become, I don't want to forget how to drive that.
David, there is a question. What's L mode?
Why can't I see that? Let me see.
Yeah, so the L.
Why can't I see?
Go ahead,
I'm
David.
wondering technologically why I can't see the question. Why is there L mode? What is L mode? So L mode simply in the Bolt and as well as the Volt. So in Chevrolet, I'm not sure if all GM electric vehicles have this, but it's kind of like what in a gas car would be like mountain mode. Like I guess if you're driving up a mountain, but it's electric, so it's a totally different thing. And it's really one pedal driving, L mode. So you basically often don't have to use the brake at all. Of course, you have to monitor your situation, and if you have to stop more abruptly than you anticipate, you can use the brake in it just like any other car. But I love the feeling of being more in control of when I, how quickly I stop and not having to use the brake. And first of all, the brake, if you drive in L mode, you don't really have to get your brake. The brakes last a lot longer, first of all.
Well, so I do want to say it's not for everyone. So it's just it's available. It's basically one pedal driving. So instead of hitting the brake, you're releasing the gas pedal.
Right.
So you're not going to know what you prefer until you get into the vehicle and you use it.
Yeah, and it only takes about a day or two to get used to. But it is, yeah, it's not for everyone, but it's a lot of fun. I think, yeah, different people prefer different things regarding the L mode. What else about the L mode? I guess it's real. But pretty much all electric vehicles now have some form of regenerative braking. Some are a little bit more aggressive than others, where you don't have to use the brake that much, and that's nice. And also with regenerative braking, it actually puts more charge back into the battery, so your range expands between charges. So that's also another huge benefit to driving in regenerative braking mode.
Well, and I'll add that well, I was driving a hybrid for probably 15 years, and those of you who've been driving hybrids, you know that you don't have brake jobs very often. I think we had our first brake job on a Toyota Prius at 95 or 100,000 miles. So that is also true of electric vehicles. So which factors into the maintenance costs. So you're really not replacing brake pads with any sort of frequency at all.
Right. Yeah, and even though on the Bolt and the Volt, it's L mode, and other EVs, it's usually not L mode. Some have B mode for brake. Others are just different levels of regenerative braking. But all EVs have some version of it. Again, some more aggressive than others, but it's just an added feature, which just makes it another way that it's more fun, in my opinion. Should we go on to the next one? They're also very affordable. There's a myth out there that, oh, I can't afford an EV because they're so expensive. Well, they're not. They're a little bit more expensive when you compare apples to apples up front, although that is going to be changing probably pretty within the next few years, even the upfront. But whatever you're paying up front more, you're getting much more back in maintenance over the life of the vehicle. There's almost no maintenance to an electric vehicle. It's very rare that it ever breaks down or anything like that, because there are a lot fewer moving parts. And a lot of dealerships, in fact, don't even they don't like to they often they don't push to sell EVs, because a lot of dealerships get most of their money from servicing.
Yeah, listen, and that's one of the challenges of buying an electric vehicle is most dealers aren't really pushing them, and some of them don't know a lot about them. There's some exceptions. There are dealers that sell more electrics. Obviously, Tesla only sells electrics, although that's a completely different buying experience, which we could explain. But yeah, so there's a lot of ambivalence among the big conventional auto manufacturers, mostly because of the fact that they do make a fair amount of their income from repair. And so that's one of the things that you will enjoy about your electric vehicle that your dealers might not necessarily enjoy.
Yep. By the way, can you guys see me okay? Am I
Yeah, we can
going?
see you, we can hear you. Are you seeing the slides, David?
I am not. Why?
Okay, all right.
Up.
So I thought so, based on what you were saying. All right, let me run a few slides here and then you jump in. So obviously, we think electric vehicles are better for the environment for a variety of reasons. We've talked about noise, obviously, energy efficiency. When you look at the EPA calculates the equivalent miles per gallon for an electric vehicle based on the fact that there is consumption of energy at the power plant, right? And energy efficiency issues, but it's head and shoulders above any gasoline powered car. Obviously, zero emissions at the vehicle. What are the emissions, lower, carbon dioxide emissions to the atmosphere? What are the emissions? People ask. Well, you're actually, you're obviously using power, and so the question of how much emissions really comes down to, well, what kind of power are you using at home? Are you buying renewable from a renewable supplier? Are you buying, sort of grid mix energy, which is kind of, includes everything from, a lot of natural gas to a little bit of coal and some nuclear and some in Pennsylvania, not a whole lot of renewables. So it really depends on what you're doing, what you're purchasing in terms of home power. So that's sort of the situation. Night charging leads to cleaner energy. What does that mean? Well, nuclear plants are running around the clock. Wind power is being generated around the clock. So there's less natural gas generation and coal generation during the daytime. That's what that means. Okay. Next slide, charging. And David, maybe you want to talk about this: level 1, level 2, charging at home. And then what's the cost of charging equipment?
So yeah, there's 3 different levels of charging. If you have an all-electric vehicle as opposed to a plug-in hybrid, which we will get into in a little bit, then level 2 is definitely advisable to have at your home. It goes on a 220 or 240 volt. You can, if you have a garage, you can put it in there. If you have a driveway, you can. I don't have a garage. I have a driveway, and we had an electrician just put the home charger there. That's a level 2. A level 1, you can just, it's more for plug-in hybrids, and because it takes too long, it probably takes too long to plug in, with a all-electric vehicle on a level 1.
Although I will say I have done it. So there was a time I was involved in a pilot study and I got a free charger, and then after 3 or 4 years it stopped working. So I was actually charging my Chevy Bolt with a B, which is all electric, out of a 110 volt outlet. So just to put a frame of a point of reference, going from you try to keep an electric vehicle in sort of the sweet range of maybe 20 to 80% of the battery capacity, or 85, 90% max, unless you're going on a trip, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it would take a day and a half for the Bolt to run off of a 110 volt outlet. So that's why David is saying that the level 1, which is using a regular 110 volt outlet, is actually very acceptable for a plug-in hybrid, which only might have 25, 50 miles of range. So it's going to take a lot less time to get a full charge. But a full electric vehicle not as convenient to go that route. So you're really going into the level 2 charger, which we'll talk. David, you want to talk a little bit about that?
What did you say, level 2?
Level 2, yes.
Yeah, so level 2 is a 220, 240 volt, and they're more conducive for your home to have it set up with a charger. You can either put in yourself or electrician put in, where you can basically have your own charging station right at your house, and you can charge it overnight or during the day anytime you want. And it's like you never have to go to the gas station. It's a great thing. Um, and they usually cost between, usually it's about $500. But a lot of, some companies, car companies, are basically having that as part of the package lately. I wouldn't, not all, but some are, where they will, I don't know if they'll install it for you, or and give you a charger. I don't know. You would know more about that, Peter.
Yeah, there were some promotions. I think Chevy was doing that where they would actually install a charger for you. I think Chevy started selling a portable charger that actually would either plug into a 230 volt or a 110 volt outlet.
Hmm.
I don't have that kind. What
I
I have,
I do have, so I just have a 240 outlet and my bolt plugs directly into it. So I don't have anything external I had to buy. I just had to get a 240 outlet run.
right.
Wow.
And so if you're fortunate enough to have like a garage set up with an electric dryer in it with a 230 volt outlet already, the cost is basically zero. So that's,
Hmm.
but I had to do exactly what Joy did, which is I had to get an electrician come in and put a 230 volt outlet right outside of on the side of my garage door, and undercover, and then I bought a very inexpensive level 2 charger for, it was well under 500 actually, and just plug into that. And so that's really that's one of the big transitions is, oh, where am I going to plug in? And they do make extended cord options if you don't have a garage. I never could get cars into my garage, which is one of the reasons why I initially bought an electric motorcycle, because I could actually pull it into my garage. But so what I have is a very long extension on my level 2 charger. So they actually make cable extensions. So this thing has a total length of about 35 feet, which is enough to reach the cars pulled all the way as far as I can get them up the driveway.
Oh, Peter, you're gonna have to give me information on that, because I would like an extension for my. That's the only issue, because we have to switch out 3 cars whenever one needs to be charged up.
Yeah, so I think if you search, well, obviously it's the regular, what is it, J17 1772
Peter,
unit.
I'm gonna jump in and just say that it's going on 7:30. So maybe later you can put some of that information in the chat. We need to move along.
Okay, very good. So
Okay.
I'm showing the slide on the comparison, the definition of a plug-in hybrid and an electric vehicle. The examples. The Prius Prime is sort of a well-known example of a plug-in hybrid, but right now there are a lot of them. I think, Chrysler made a minivan for many years and still does. I think the Pacifica. Some of these vehicles, by the way, are a little hard to get in Pennsylvania, but RAV4, there's actually a Mitsubishi Outlander FEV.
Yep.
So there's a lot of them now. And then, obviously the Advantage, some people like the Advantage. I will say that that is a perfect transitional vehicle. So one of the things we talk about is range anxiety with electric vehicles. So a lot of people have range anxiety and they say, well, I want to be able to get to, the beach and back, or I want to get here and back, and I don't want to worry about, well, so if you have range anxiety, the plug-in hybrid is a great alternative. And I, like David, I actually owned a Chevy Volt with a V for a couple of years before I got the Bolt. And so I do a lot of business travel. And so I actually had, uh, you know, electric regret after my electric ran out. So there's both sides of that coin. But the advantage of the plug-in hybrid is obviously range. So you got a certain amount of electric range, and which will do most of your local travel needs. And then if you really are into long distance travel and you don't really want to worry about this question of charging, then you just keep going. The all electric, on the other hand, obviously, what are they? The oldest ones, in the recent era, obviously Nissan Leaf, Tesla, Chevy, Bolt, some great new pickup trucks. Ford Lightning has been out for a year or so. Rivian has been out. Now there are a tremendous number of options, and so it gets a little bit more complicated as well, figuring out what you want to do. But the basics of a full electric vehicle are the same, which is setting up for home charging and then going on long trips. How do you charge on the road? And we'll talk about that. Oh, the thing that people talk about a lot is, well, the range decreases in cold weather. Why is that? Because your heater is running on electric, and different vehicles actually have different technologies, which I only learned recently after, the Chevy Bolt, I think, has electric resistance heating. The Tesla actually has a heat pump, so it's a little bit more efficient on the heating side. But, so the difference, that difference actually also exists with combustion engines, but it's a little more pronounced with electric vehicles, because the combustion engine is creating so much waste heat. It's basically free heating in the winter, shall we say. Okay, enough said about that. Charging technologies we talked about. Level 1, 2 are the home chargers. DC fast charging. So this is, the question is, well, how do you charge on the road, right? So there's the technology is there for relatively fast charging on the road, and they call it DC fast charging. Tesla calls it supercharging. And so the question is, where are these things, and how do you charge? How long does it take? And so the answer is complicated. So every vehicle has a different design charging rate. And as I've learned, Tesla will charge faster than a Chevy Bolt. And I've done quite a bit of long distance traveling, and I have to say, it's a bit of an attitude adjustment in terms of, well, now I'm going to try to find a charging station that I could have a bite to eat on the way, right? As opposed to, I got to say, my mentality as a young man was, go, go, go. I would pull into a gas station and fill up and just keep going. And I could drive, 6-8 hours at a clip without, little crazy. Now at, 65 plus, I'm actually, grateful to be able to get out of the car and stretch my legs. So, the charging speeds, the charging locations. So like everything else these days, where do you charge? Well, there's two things. One is there's an app for that. So there's something called PlugShare, which is got every charging station that you can imagine, and you can put filters on it, and you could actually use it for navigation. A lot of the vehicles now, including the Tesla, integrate charging into the navigation system. So, and again, I've only had the Tesla for 2 or 3 months, but it's, very easy and actually to let the Tesla tell you, well, this is where you're going to have to stop after a couple of hours or three, however many hours on the road. This is your best option. So the how do you do it? It's relatively easy. Most of the charging stations are configured to accept credit cards. Oh, David mentioned on the front end, there is historically Tesla and everything else. Okay, so Tesla decided to build out its own charging network. It's if you do a lot of long distance travel and you want the most convenience and the quickest charging, the simple answer is Tesla. Okay, and the rest of the charging system, a lot of attention is being paid on building it out, and I think the next 2 or 3 years are going to be instrumental. I will say it's not where I would like it to be currently, and which is to say, hey, it's like a gas station. You're going to pass many of them on your route, right? I think we're headed in that direction, and Tesla is probably closest to that direction. But new locations are springing up all the time. Performance and reliability of the charging station is getting better. A lot of the charging networks, there's different companies, like different gas companies have different charging networks. Most of them today, and I think they're actually going to be required to be public access with a credit card. You don't have to join any network, but all of them encourage you to join a network and charge in their network. But I've never really seen the advantage to that, with the basically having to use whatever is on my route. I'm using a variety of different networks. One thing I will say, if you're not on the Tesla network, is watch out for those oddball companies that have closed systems that actually won't let you use a credit card. I learned that the hard way recently last year. So there is a new network that I had never heard of, that a college up in Connecticut installed their charging system, and I couldn't get in. Anyway, lesson learned on that. David, do you know something about the Tesla transition? So Tesla is, I think some of the other car companies are going to be adopting the Tesla charging system
Yeah.
and opening. Go ahead.
So first of all, even though the Tesla charging system is a lot better right now than the others, that doesn't mean the Tesla car is better than the other EV cars. In fact, there are a lot of good electric cars, just as good, if not, arguably better than Teslas, or in some people's opinion. But the car itself, it doesn't mean that the charging system means it's a car. But very importantly, here's something that's very, very important for all EV owners to know, or people thinking about getting an EV to know. In about a year, the Tesla superchargers, about 70% or maybe a little bit more of them, will be open to non-Teslas. In fact, Ford already, like the Mach-E and I think the Lightning as well, they already opened to Tesla chargers. And GM is going to follow very soon, and you'll just have to get adapters for now. But also, very importantly, in about a year or so, all EV companies that are non-Teslas are going to have Tesla-style ports, which is called the NACS. It's North American Charging System. That's what Tesla uses, a North American Charging System network. And all EVs, in about a year and a half at most, are going to have the ports that will allow the car to go to a Tesla supercharger, at least most of them, and access the supercharger. So that means that there will be no more issues with reliability, or at least nothing significant. And it will really open up all EVs, EV adoptions, and it's all be uniformed. That's very important to know. There's probably some questions that people have about that I might not have covered there, but
I did want to add that there are adapters. So the Tesla comes with an adapter that lets you use a non-Tesla charging level 2 charger, which I have, and it goes the other way. So as soon as Tesla opens up its network to the other brands, so you should be able to get an adapter that will let you charge an older Chevy Bolt that doesn't have that type of connector at a Tesla charging station. So I agree that's going to be a great innovation. I think, by the way, David, I didn't mean to say that I'm a big proponent of Tesla. I love my Chevy Bolt, but now I'm in an unusual position of being able to give everyone notes on comparison of them. So there are things I like better about the Bolt. There are things I like better about the Tesla, but I think David's right. I think within a couple of years, it should be sort of open to all, and the charging network will not be as big a factor. We should probably plow ahead. So this next slide is cost to buy. So as everyone, the knock against EVs is, oh, they're more expensive. That's actually not even true today. I mean, the cost of a Bolt is about 25,000 as at a base cost, right? And so the cost has been steadily coming down. The cost of my experience buying the Tesla recently, I was actually hoping to buy a Chevy Equinox, but they weren't going to. We had a problem with a vehicle. I needed to replace a vehicle basically, and I couldn't wait for the Chevy to be available. But there's some very interesting vehicles out there that are at a lower cost. The cost of Teslas have come down as well. So there's a lot of different options available. And the battery manufacturing cost keeps coming down every single year, which is what's driving the cost to really now essentially parity. And the operating cost, one of the things that you have to think about with an electric vehicle is lifetime cost of ownership. So basically, you're paying probably a third of the cost of fuel as you would in an ICE vehicle. And the maintenance costs are nil. So you're paying for a safety inspection, not an emission inspection every year. Your brakes are going to last, I don't know, 100,000 miles or more. So there's very, very little to go wrong. Tune-up, no tune-ups. It's basically tires, brakes from time to time, and mechanical issues that happen from time to time with any vehicle. So you have to think like fleet managers think, which is what's the real cost of ownership. And there's actually some very good tools online. You can search for Kelley Blue Book 5-year cost of ownership, and there's an excellent tool that lets you look at the cost of ownership for different vehicles.
there's a question.
So go ahead. Sorry, David.
There's a question about tires that someone was asking. Do you see that, Peter?
Is there any truth to the tires on EVs wearing out more quickly?
Not in my experience. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I don't really. I think I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll be honest with you. I'm not. If it is, it's not a lot. There may be a little bit, and because they accelerate more quickly.
I will say I do have an opinion about the tires on my Chevy Bolt, and I see the Tesla are the same. They're very they're high efficiency tires. They have a very low profile, kind of like, little street sport car tires that are popular now. The problem with that, in my experience, is potholes and curbs. So with the Bolt, we actually twice put a hole in a tire, which, as you know, is not patchable. That's the only negative that I've seen, but you're going to see that on any low profile tire. And my advice is don't hit curbs. I mean, I've put holes in van tires, actually cutting a turn making a right turn on the street too hard one time as well. So some of you may or may not have had that experience. I don't think they wear out particularly faster, but I don't know that I have years and years of experience on that. So cheaper to own. I think we've already crossed the line. So the biggest knock on electric vehicles is they're more expensive, right? So everyone planted in their mind is the $70,000 introductory Tesla, right? So that's kind of ancient history now. Yes, you can buy an expensive car. You could buy an expensive combustion engine vehicle, right? Most people probably pay $40,000 to $50,000 for a vehicle today, which I never did. And I have people who tell me, "Oh, I always buy used cars," and I used to buy a couple of year old cars all the time. And so I understand that. And there's not as much availability of used electric vehicles now. Again, the more adoption you get, the more that's going to change. Federal tax credit. So this link, fueleconomy.gov, et cetera, FEG/tax 2023, that is your best reference in terms of what, so a new car, it used to be very simple, like any new electric vehicle would get a $7,500 tax credit when you filed your tax return. It's gotten a little bit different. There's used car rebate availability, $4,000 now. It's now income. Go ahead.
I'm getting that here on my Volt. So the 4,000.
7,500. Yes. Or 4,000. Which one?
No, I'm getting the 4,000 one on my used Volt. Volt.
For used.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
there's been a lot of these measures were put in place really to address the affordability question for people that are lower income. So the key is, if you're married, you're now you're not going to be, if you have more than $350,000 in income, whatever that sort of adjusted gross income, I think they call it, for someone who's married, you're no longer eligible for that federal tax credit. Oh, the other thing to mention, in Pennsylvania, you also have a Pennsylvania tax credit, again, which is income qualified. So it's really designed to facilitate lower income car owners in purchasing it. So, the other restriction, buying an electric car, if you want the rebate, you really have to go to this website, and I'm going to take you there really quickly. So this is the fueleconomy.gov website, and it's got all the income qualification stuff. The other thing is now it's got to have a certain amount of North American content. So you have to you're gonna have to say, well, when am I taking delivery? So 2024, model year, what year? Well, you want to know what's available. Just search for all, right? I'm interested in all electric vehicles. This is everything now that's available, that the tax credit is available on. And so you see, it's a long list, but it's not necessarily everything that's on the market. There are some cars that dropped off, like I think Kia. So Kia Niro makes a good, very nice electric vehicle. but it didn't qualify under the new tax rebate. So if the tax credit is really one of the things that's driving you to buy, you really need to go to this website. And it's got a similar thing for used vehicles as well.
Peter, let me
Um,
jump in. Can I jump in on this?
Sure.
So now you can buy a new electric vehicle and they will take $7,500 off at the time of purchase. So
Yes.
you don't have to go through the tax process. They'll do it for you. I'm not sure if that's for all new EVs, but definitely the ones that qualify. They won't. I don't even think the dealership's going to ask you like what your income is and anything like that. I think they'll just take it off right then and there. Um, and a lot of even non-qualifying EVs, try to they'll try to compete with the qualifying ones by taking some money off of the
Yes,
EVs also.
that's a very, very good point. So you can get a good deal on vehicles that don't qualify because they know, their sales have been hurt, right? So they're trying to sharpen their pencil and lower their prices. There's a good website that shows the equivalent efficiencies and ranges. So fuel economy, I think it's the base fueleconomy.gov, find a car. So under fueleconomy.gov, if you click on find a car, it will basically, you can
It's
look
up
up.
top. It's up top under searches.
Yeah. So you could search, and I think you can do side by side comparisons with like 5 different vehicles. So yeah, so let's say I want to check out a Chevy. Oh, wait a second. Is this not EVs? Small cars. I think there's a different tool for EVs. Sorry. Well, anyway, we'll figure that out and provide you some information. But that information is also on fueleconomy.gov. All right. So myth and fact. So I think, hopefully we're dispelling the fact that, the myth that electric vehicles really are only good for extremely short trips. You can't commute with them. They make your energy bill go way up. So the equivalence is, it's literally, I think, a quarter to a third of the cost for quote unquote fueling up when you charge at home. People ask, well, what about when you're charging on the road? So I've got a lot of experience with that. It's still cheaper. I don't know. I want to say maybe a half to 3/4 of the cost. I don't know. That's a ballpark, but it's still cheaper to buy the juice from a fast charger on the road.
Mhm.
Electric vehicles aren't clean because of the power plants. Well, look, EPA has done the math, and that's just not true, right? So less greenhouse gases, less energy consumption, more reliability, um, more expensive than the average car. Well, we already talked about that. So that is history. Yes, it can be more expensive if you want it to be, just like, well, I want to go out and buy a Cadillac or a Lincoln or a Mercedes, right? They can be more expensive too. I guess the complaint that I often hear about, just to mention briefly, some people say, well, you're mining and making a battery. And yes, like everything that's manufactured on our planet today, there is energy and emissions associated with manufacture. But that the on balance for the life of ownership of a vehicle, it's head and shoulders lower greenhouse gas emissions and efficiency and energy consumption for an electric vehicle. So that's really a very, very persistent myth.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of websites. I am very partial to the Department of Energy websites, and fueleconomy.gov is really a good intro. It's, not too jazzy to look at, but it's a very good website. I will say, I mentioned earlier Kelly Blue Book. I didn't queue it up, but I do this all the time. Kelly Blue Book, 5-year cost of ownership. So they have a nifty thing, the lowest 5-year cost to own vehicles, right? And they actually give little blue ribbon awards. And there's some really good data on this, or you could compare 5-year cost to ownership of different vehicles, right? And so I think uh, hybrids have always been among the best 5-year cost of ownership. And electric vehicles now really have parity. So yeah, so this figure that you're looking at is the Chevy Bolt is now, pretty much equivalent to the Toyota Corolla, which historically the non-hybrid was up among the lowest 5-year cost of ownership. So the Bolt has really been a game changer. And I got to say, 5 years is not enough. If you keep your car for life, I've kept cars for 10, 12, 14 years, you're continuing to make that money back. So if there was a 10-year cost of ownership, the Bolts would be head and shoulders above even the Corolla hybrid. So now let's open it up for questions. I don't know if Joy, if there's anything in the chat you've been following.
I don't see anything else that's there. Somebody can either raise their hand or put it in a chat if they have a question.
So when they come in, go ahead. If you even want to unmute yourself and ask a question, that'll be great. I will say I'll share a little bit more of my history. So we started out probably in 2016, 2017 with a Chevy Volt with a V, which is a plug-in hybrid. And I got a little frustrated going on long trips with, the fuel economy on gasoline. And my wife, Lois, actually surprised me and said, we should just get an electric vehicle. And I thought she was the one who was going to have range anxiety. So we took our Bolt, we went up to Maine on a vacation a few years ago. I've taken it on business trips, Pennsylvania, New York, Maryland, out around Erie in Western Pennsylvania, Ohio. So I've pretty much taken it, not necessarily across the country, but I've gone far and wide. So it's a little bit of readjustment on charging and knowing where to charge and when to charge and having something to do, rather than wait. So David, I don't know if you have any experiences on that you'd like to share.
Yeah. One of the things I think about regarding EVs is that different lifestyles are more conducive for different EVs and even different types of EVs. I'm a very practical person. So I think about, so for example, some people it might be more conducive for them to buy, for example, a plug-in hybrid rather than an all electric vehicle. And for some people, it might be more conducive for a Tesla rather than a Bolt. And some people, it's better to buy a Bolt. So it all depends on a lot of factors. And I mean, I can offer, if I'm allowed to do this, I can offer, I like to fit the person and their lifestyle with the EV, or at least it's probably not just one EV, but maybe a few EVs that they can choose from that are out there, just to kind of help guide people, because it's a lot of information. It's a lot of myths and information, and having someone just walk them through it, I love doing it.
So you're an EV whisperer?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a therapist, so in my life,
Well, that
so
explains it.
so I would like to be like an EV therapist. So to your point, but being because a lot of people have anxiety around it, and understandably so with all the misinformation out there. But I believe almost everyone or most people, at least if they own their own home, should have either a plug-in hybrid or electric vehicle. I don't see any reason not to. I know that sounds bold, but if you live in an apartment, that could be quite impractical. But if you have your home with an outlet, um, at least a plug-in hybrid is very conducive, if not an all-electric. So that's my.
I have a couple things to add. Oh, here, specifically to Bolt owners, here's a question. I've been paying attention to the eventual relaunch of the Bolt EUV, which is about when I have been planning on my next vehicle purchase. But I'm a tall guy. Any thoughts on a 6'2" person fitting in there comfortably?
I can't answer that because I'm pretty short. So
Oh, I have an opinion about getting into a Chevy Bolt. I actually had difficulty getting into the Volt with a V, and I used to hit my head all the time. David's nodding his head, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And I'm
yeah.
not that tall, although I've got short legs and a long torso, so maybe that's why I kept hitting my head. But I find it very easy to get into the Bolt with a B. I think it's a really cool little car, and fold the seats down. I'm a practical guy. I mean, I'll go to the home store and load up stuff in the back, and and I do the rain garden program. So whatever vehicle I'm using, I'm usually making a mess.
Yeah.
Well, I can give a suggestion. So there's opportunities that people, EV owners, like to show off their cars. So at the Earth Day event, we're going to have some of our EV cars there. And some will be, the owners will be there to, have you go in. And then, and other ones will just be there because the people will be tabling, such as myself. Um, so there's opportunities to
So I'm sorry, keep going.
to try it out.
I just wanted to show what PlugShare is. So PlugShare is basically a map-based, um, hey, I'm going on a trip. Are there really charging stations around? So the orange yellowish ones are the fast chargers. Green for long distance travel, you pretty much count those out unless they're at a destination, right? So you'll find, and one of the things I've learned to do is if I'm going on long distance travel is find a hotel that has a charging station, which they have now. And I've even plugged into, 110-volt outlets at hotels in a pinch overnight just to get a little bit of charge. But so it's a very visual map based. My daughter lives in Baltimore, and so that's the I-95 corridor is really good for charging. The one thing that upsets me about Pennsylvania is how slow the turnpikes have. The Pennsylvania Turnpike has been annoyingly slow in adoption of charging. So this kind of tells you can filter by the type of networks. Wait a second. Amenities. Oh my gosh, where is the? Anyway, you can filter by the type of vehicle And it seems like it's changed. Dining, lodging. Vehicle and plug, sorry. Vehicle is used. Well, anyway, you tell it, I've got a new computer, so this is not set up. You basically tell it what your vehicle is, and it will filter. But so, and I think this is not, see, this is all non-Tesla. No, not so. So you're starting to see Wawa's installing Teslas in Maryland. The Royal Farms convenience stores have really put in, yeah. See, there's a Royal Farms in Maryland. So, and you could actually use this to plan your route. And so this is a great help. And sometimes, even though now so the Tesla has it built into the navigation, but if I'm going on a long trip, I'm usually taking a peek at the network and seeing where, where the charging stations are. The biggest problem that I've had in Pennsylvania historically has been, so I have some clients who are up in north central Pennsylvania, and so it's gotten better. You can see there's more, but you'll also see some things in the non-Tesla world that are not easy. Sheets are great. So the Sheets convenience stores, a lot of them around the state have them. You'll see like a lot of Chevy dealers have them. The problem with those are they're not always accessible or operating, as I've learned. So you've got to kind of look at the details. I have used them when on the road, but you've got to look at the details for things that are not like a convenience store or something like that in terms of hours of operation and accessibility. So I actually I recently charged at a Volkswagen dealer that I saw on PlugShare. I was mid-state in Pennsylvania, and I'm like, wait, do they sell electric vehicles? Yes, they do now. So
We're over time, so any other questions? So yes, at the CREC, Earth Day, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And that is on April 20th, Saturday, April 20th.
So I do want to make one last pitch. So you could come out and see them. We usually have them at Haverford Township Day, first Saturday in October. I will say, just, take the plunge, test drive them.
Oh, yeah.
It's not as easy to get electric vehicle rentals, and I kind of don't recommend that you learn in a rental vehicle anyway. But if you know people with electric vehicles, or just go into a dealer and take a test drive.
Yeah, I don't think many people go electric and then go back to gas. In fact, we get spoiled. That's how good they are. I will never go gas again.
My wife really, really surprised me, first telling me, oh, we should get an electric vehicle. And then she really is so happy not to go to the gas station anymore, because I usually go on long trips and then I actually work out of a home office. So I never was the one fueling up the vehicles. So she was ecstatic not having to go to the gas station anymore.
And the drive is just the drive is just so much better. It's just a better drive in every which way.
Quicker,
Well,
more responsive.
My daughter learned to drive on an electric vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Mine too.
And then she went to our minivan, and she's like, it's so jerky.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't used to a transmission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. My daughter also, she learned on the Bolt, on the Chevy with the B, and when she did defensive driving with the gas car for her to get her license, she's like, this feels a lot different. It's not nearly as good. I'm like, I know that's gas. You're lucky you have an electric.
And if anyone wants to try an electric motorcycle, I really should get rid of mine because I'm a little, my knees are shot. So I still do ride it from time to time, but I probably shouldn't. It's
Well, I
that's
think,
a lot of fun, by the way.
Go
well,
ahead,
I'd
Joy.
like to thank everyone for participating. Thank you, David and Peter, for speaking. And we hope to see you at other events. Please do check out Haverford Climate Action. It has lists of events and lots of great information that's specific to Haverford Township. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.